Kaya Biz.
You're listening to Kaya Biz here on Kaya 959, and of course, Pivot Point is a conversation that we're looking to have. Our guest this evening joins us from the National Empowerment Fund. I'm sure, as I mentioned, that funding comes to mind, which is natural as that is the key function and mandate of the entity, but of course to provide us with more detail not only into the funding options they provide, but how it is that they really contribute to supporting, guiding, mentoring and influencing entrepreneurs in order to reshape South Africa's economic growth path. We joined in studio by Zama Khanile, who's the Divisional Executive for Venture Capital and Corporate Finance at the National Empowerment Fund, known as the NEF. Sis Zama, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gugu.
Such a delight to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we're looking forward to hearing many of your thoughts. And I think for many, as we take a look at your title and, of course, the functions that you serve, the Venture Capital, a Divisional Executive of the National Empowerment Fund. For those who aren't familiar with this, give us some perspective and context as to what it is you do.
All right. So I work at the National Empowerment Fund. So it is a development funding institution, but it's always important out of the pool of DFIs to understand which DFI was established to serve what purpose. So at the NEF, we look at, broadening broad-based Black economic empowerment. So our mandate is quite broad. I mean, we do fund businesses. That's the primary work that we do, but our mandate is broader than that, in that we provide financial support. We also provide non-financial support, and we also tasked with creating a culture of savings and investment amongst Black people who may not be aware of how to first save their money, and once they've got sufficient savings, how to invest that. So our funding goes beyond just providing debt or being an equity partner in strategic transactions. It goes beyond to make sure that we build sustainable businesses and communities as well.
Yeah, that's the refreshing perspective you gave us, especially focus on individuals and, of course, making sure that they also have an opportunity to better manage their finances. Just looking at the stats and figures about South African spending habits and savings trends, there's a lot of work that we have to put in there. And I'm keen to understand, given your work and the role that you serve at the NEF for a number of years now, what the trends have been, especially coming out of a post-COVID world. If there's any insight and highlights that you can share.
Well, over the years, we've observed that there is a constant demand from Black entrepreneurs needing to, one, establish new businesses or to grow. But we did, experience the effects of COVID within our investments. But what we saw is a lot of businesses, are repivoting and changing direction to be a little bit more adaptable, to broaden their income streams and not have, risk in terms of concentration of either clients or products or markets. So a lot of our clients started, thinking laterally in terms of how they can broaden their revenue base. But we were also quite agile in how we responded at the time. So we supported, Black-owned manufacturers that were helping to fight the fight against COVID, and those that were, helping us keep the shelves stocked in our retailers with our food supplies as well. So we really tried to respond to the issues that were emanating and coming out. We then realized, we've helped with supplies, but a lot of businesses haven't been operating because they didn't have the permission to, according to the different levels of lockdown. And so what that meant is that companies now had working capital issues. We wanted to retain as many jobs as possible. We didn't want to lose, the traction in terms of Black economic empowerment and promoting entrepreneurship because of COVID. So through our shareholder ministry, which is the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, we got a small allocation to help with economically distressed companies as a result of COVID. So it was to help them kind of ride the wave until we get to this new normal that we're still trying to navigate now. So we had to be responsive. Our portfolio felt it, but our people were very agile. We moved to, hybrid work. Well, at the time, work from home. And we actually, under those circumstances, ended up achieving some of the highest levels of approvals. Quite interestingly. So I guess
was it a reduction in terms of controls, or businesses just responding better?
The controls were there, but our agility, I think we put the accelerator down on being agile and being responsive, because had we not have been as agile, we don't know, the backward tracking we would have done in terms of, promoting BE. So, yeah, we've seen some great, from a productivity perspective, and that is preempted by us streamlining our processes and making sure that we meet regularly as, committee members. So there was a time even last year we'd meet at least twice a week, if not more, in terms of investment committee meetings that we'd have, so that we were agile and responsive in turning around the support that a lot of companies needed.
If anything, this tells us a lot about the commitment, right, of the NEF to really build businesses and support them, not just in terms of funding and financing options, but as you say, the mentorship and support, because I can imagine that through the years in identifying black industrialists and female-led businesses, you've noted and perhaps have been able to identify some of the weaknesses that we have either in the system but also within the cultivation of entrepreneurs in South Africa. You yourself have worked in the development finance space for years, the IDC, then moving to the NEF. I'm keen to understand from you, when you speak to fellow black women entrepreneurs, what it is that we need to do to show up better, to ensure that we're clear about the funding that we want. Because so often when it's Women's Day or Women's Month, we're always talking about just this lack of opportunity for women to penetrate certain segments of the economy. But the truth is the money is there, the support is there, but there's an aspect that's lacking in terms of connecting the two effectively.
Yes, I think in terms of increasing access to finance for women-owned businesses, probably where a lot of work still needs to be done. I think we've done our part as the NEF, but we really seek to work with more partners that are aligned. And so it's about being intentional about our relationships with various women business organizations and tapping into different sectors, but it stems from an intention. So our board and our ExCo is quite intentional through our CEO to say, no, of the annual budget that we have, we must set aside some monies for majority black women-owned businesses. And so when you make it a key performance indicator to crowd in women into the economy, and you create an enabling environment as well, it makes it then a little bit easier to tap into those women. But I think there's still a lot of unmet demand, if I can say that, in terms of bringing in more black female entrepreneurs into the mainstream of the economy. And I think it's something that we can unlock through continued partnerships with our, the likes of the DTIC or other like-minded institutions that want to lean on some of the lessons we've learned ever since we launched our Women Empowerment Fund in the year 2014, where it's a standalone fund that really seeks to fund businesses that are not only black women owned but also managed by black women. So we want to see them operationally get involved, know the business in and out, and be drivers of that that profit line.
Definitely. This is really an opportunity for you to also enlighten us as to what the goals and the growth has been like, specifically with the fund that's aligned to women empowerment and development. So show off on the stats and figures and the number of lives you've been able to change here.
So we've funded a number of businesses across sectors. Our impact at the last audit was over 1.7 billion.
Sure.
To majority. I have to highlight this. There are businesses that have a 5%, 10%, 25% women's stake, but I'm talking about majority black women-owned businesses who have like a black female CEO. And in recent times, we've been lucky to partner up with the DTIC once again in terms of setting aside concessionary funding. But now we're sitting with a situation where the demand is still there, although the funds are exhausted. So we're working, I guess, with our partners to try and make sure we fill that part once again.
Well done. And I can imagine that when a lot of women interact with you, you always are able to impart a lot of this knowledge and guidance for them in order to manage this tricky terrain sometimes for entrepreneurs, because it's intimidating. Finance can also be very difficult for women to access because we're not always sure of the kind of financing options that might be available. and of course where to go, but really appreciative of the efforts of the NEF to shift the gender divide. If you've just joined us, we are in conversation with Zama Khanile, who is the Divisional Executive for Venture Capital and Corporate Finance at the National Empowerment Fund, also known as the NEF. Joining us to share more details not only about the NEF, but of course the efforts and the work that they've put in place to ensure that we cultivate a greater spirit of entrepreneurs, black-owned, black-run, woman-led, woman-owned businesses in order to shift the trajectory of South Africa's economy. Zama, I'm sitting opposite you, and there's some similarities in terms of our careers and trajectories, right? You studied accounting, you are a qualified chartered accountant, and you've spent a lot of your life within the development finance environment, literally changing the lives of individuals. And I'm keen to understand if that comes with a great sense of pressure. Given that when we look at key leaders like yourselves in the financial services space, we often aren't aware of the corporate challenges that you might have to deal with, the ongoing stresses of finding that elusive balance in terms of your personal life as well as your professional life. But as an accomplished black female executive in South Africa, how do you manage it all?
With a lot of support.
Yeah.
With a lot of support, one, from my work environment, two, from my family and friends, because it is a lot to navigate, and they are challenges that we face, particularly it's like the triple burden. You're black,
right?
female, and then you're young. So I think what has enabled me to navigate that is support, more so now as, a relatively new mom, but also being in environments. I've been lucky to have other females that have, cleared the path for me. So I think the role of mentorship and sponsorship is important in terms of identifying youngsters and giving them opportunity. And so I try within my sphere as well to identify and nurture young talent and, get them ready for when opportunity strikes. But it's the support.
I admire that, and I appreciate the honesty, because the truth is nobody really does get by themselves. We all need support. You mentioned leadership, not only those who have opened and cleared the path for you, but you doing the same thing for those who are coming behind you. I'm keen to understand, given that the title of this conversation is Pivot Point, what are some of the key events or key characteristics that you had to embody that have pivoted your journey and career trajectory into the leadership role that you're in right now?
I think it's being bold, and I think I speak for most women when we say women are so powerful, they're so smart. If you look at how they run their households, how they make their salaries stretch to raise families and future leaders.
Yeah.
And when you're old enough, you look back and you're like, how did these people do it?
Right.
And moms who run single, parent homes. So women are strong, they're resilient, but I think we tend to be risk averse and shy and stay in our corner. And for me, I think the turning point has been pushing myself, not because I wasn't scared, but pushing myself and putting my hand up for opportunity and being bold and leaning into that, whatever that looks like. And also relationships. I think one has been mindful about cultivating relationships, and they say we're not that good at networking, but that art and skill to carry on a conversation from a once-off meeting and be able to stay relevant and in touch with certain people that you feel you could add value to and could do the same for you in your life as well.
Definitely. We don't need a golf course, just give us brunch and a few mimosas. That should keep us going to network as ladies.
We've got different spaces, but we can still do the same, networking and create our own girls club.
Yeah, no, for sure. Zama, on that note, it would be remiss of me not to ask you what's next in your personal capacity. And I put this broadly in terms of how you look to pivot in your own career and the influence that you have within the spaces that you operate in, and how the NEF itself also looks to pivot within the space and the role that you fulfill to really continue to entrench the impact you have on society.
So we're looking to grow our impact and our efforts. If you look at the last year alone, we've done, 1.3 billion, which is for most organizations is not a small amount. But if you look at the 200 plus businesses that we've been able to support, that gives me, a sense of gratitude. If you look at the 200 plus businesses that we've been able to support, that gives me, a sense of gratitude. And I think is to be more meaningful and add value to society, not just locally, but also globally, and change the world in one small way, and change the world in my own perspective, right? My sphere of influence. So it's just to create, to broaden my impact, and to help to generating tomorrow's leaders in whatever efforts, because outside of this, then one does support a number of women-led or women leadership organizations.
African Women Chartered Accountants, right? She used to be one of the board members, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I was the past president. So and the ladies now are doing a great job, and we support them from afar. But that's one of the things that's close to my heart as well.
Got you. Yeah. Another personal question. We love the empowerment of women, right? And you're a mother of boys. How important is that in terms of creating an ecosystem where both men and women are both aligned and on the same team, to ensure that as we empower women, we don't leave the boy or the men of the future behind?
Yeah, and I think that's such an important question, because we cannot afford to leave the boy child behind, as we recognize that the girl child deserves a space in the economy, in society, and to be respected. So it is a huge task about conscious parenting.
Yes.
Which
you're doing well at, by the way.
You have to unlearn a lot of things you didn't know you'd learned over the years, but it's about raising people that will respect their counterparts, be they female or male, and know that everybody has a place and a role to play, and to ultimately be respectful.
Definitely. Zama, such a pleasure speaking to you today. Really appreciate the fact that you came through in studio and have enlightened us on so many key aspects that we need to be mindful of. The role of the NEF, you yourself as a personal leader, we're really appreciative of your ongoing efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's Zama Khanile, who's the head Divisional Executive, for Venture Capital and Corporate Finance at the National Empowerment Fund, joining us for Pivot Point. As you know, Pivot Point is where we speak to various business leaders, giving us some insight into the pivotal roles and functions that they play, and of course the pivotal influence that they also look to leave behind. So hopefully you've gained a lesson or two, and if you're a woman in business and looking to gain some support beyond financial, but of course mentorship and many of the other aspects that speak to developing the industrial sector of South Africa's economy, do be sure to reach out to the NEF, and perhaps you might be in line to solicit the support that you require to facilitate your growth.